Nigeria-centric and very education-oriented. But bear in mind the title of your talk, The West African Roots of American Islam. Obviously, there are many roots of Islam, African roots of Islam in America. And the emphasis would be rather different if you look at different communities or different origins. For instance, Paul Stoller's book, Money Has No Smell, is very, very economics or business oriented in New York. Or if you look, you might look similar if you looked at Senegalese roots. It would look different still if you looked at Sierra Leonean roots, where people might be political refugees. But is this specific to the northern Nigerians, or do you find other motives and preoccupations there, or what would be the basis of comparison and hopefully synthesis?
Well, I'm not sure what you're looking for there. I think that what I'm talking about is just one piece of the big picture, and I think you're absolutely right. There are all those other influences as well. We need to look at as many of them as we can, but it's a mosaic, isn't it? It's a picture that has bits from everywhere. So, I think you can only try to look at as many pieces as you can. Now, whether there are other political agendas or economic agendas in these communities that are affiliated with the Qadariya, specifically with the Fodio family, I can't say. Because I am not privy to that. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if there were, but I have told you what I know, and I don't have any other information. But I think there's plenty of work out there for lots of other scholars to pursue and to shape this model in new ways. I think that would be exciting. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. This has been completely fascinating, as I expected it to be. I happened upon the work of Sheikh Muhammad Sharif just randomly looking for free translations of Usman Dan Fodio on the internet, but I didn't know that much about the movement, and I certainly didn't know that there was a community in my hometown of San Diego. But it seems to me that the focus of this activity has been on American reverts or converts, and not on immigrant communities. Right. So is that correct? Can I ask the same question over again? Could you just talk more about, because in the 30 or 40 years that this movement has grown up, right, and sprouted in all these different communities, it is also the 30 or 40 years where the Muslim American population has mushroomed, and they are majority South Asian, and they are the first generation of Muslim Americans, and their problems are completely different from from those of reverts or converts.
I think you're absolutely right. What's fascinating to me is to see the children of some of these families moving toward Qadariya Sufi communities that they find when they move away from home and get jobs in major urban centers. And that's surprising to me. The other thing I want to say is that as for the Logan Center, when I last tried to call them, there was no answer. The number was disconnected. So these communities wax and wane according to whether people move. We're such a mobile society that people move for their jobs, and so they look for another community, maybe start another community. Even in Lawrence, there are many, many more Muslims than go to the mosque, because the mosque is fraught with its own political issues, and there are people who don't like Sufis, and too many Sufis, and as far as they're concerned, but all kinds of complicating factors. So very often you don't know what kinds of Muslims are out there, who they are, how they're affiliated, unless you really dig and search. But I do see, and you're right, these are heritage contexts, these grassroots African American communities who embrace Latinos, who embrace any Caucasian reverts. Yes, they have a different agenda than immigrants, but I do see them merging in subsequent generations on the basis of Sufism being more in keeping with life in the United States and what is allowed and what is not allowed, that sort of flexibility, yeah. So I don't know if that's an answer to your question, but
Can I ask another one?
I think you, unless anybody else has one, yes?
So the feeling that I got from the Sankore website, and the feeling that I'm getting from your talk is very much an idea of, I don't want to say self-centered, but it's an identity that's very grounded in its the epistemologies and principles that it follows, and it doesn't intend to set itself up according to what the mainstream Muslim community is doing, or the political Muslim American organizations on the one hand, and also what Western academics think about the Islamic world or Muslims or Muslim history. I mean, Sheikh Mohammed Sharif has put up articles on there that would have been accepted in any academic journal or to be presented at any conference. But he's not doing that. He's doing his own thing, and it seems like that's a really important point. Is that they have a solid foundation, and they don't really care what these other communities and what other kind of identity constructions people are putting on them, because they're too busy with what they're doing.
That's a really important point, and I think you're absolutely right. And what they're doing is what they saw the Fodio community doing. What they're doing is trying to live as Muslims who seek knowledge, and by this, we're not just talking, I have a really hard time with colleagues who are sort of outside of this box where there's a lot more to explain, because they say, oh, well, those women are just, studying about religion, but, let's get real, they need college degrees. Well, okay, yeah, for some things you do, but the colleagues who don't understand the context discount this curriculum because they feel it's Islamic, so it's not relevant, whereas the people involved in the Sankore Institute and in these endeavors understand that the canon of knowledge that dates back to the Prophet Muhammad, the Quran, the scholars who came 9th, 10th century, Ibn Arabi, Al-Ghazali, all these people, that is the canon of great scholarship for knowing why you're on this planet, what you're supposed to do on this planet, how to live together, science, technology, medicine, all of those things that the rest of the world doesn't know were associated with Islam in the golden age of Islam. Because, when do we learn about Islam in our Western education system? We just don't. So what Sheikh Mohammed is doing is exactly what he saw the scholars in Meworno doing, and they're doing what the scholars in the Fodio family did, and the Fodio family was relying on 10th century texts. Case in point, one of these poems in her collected works was Sufi women, and we found historical background that connected it to Al-Jawzi's 12th century work, Sufi Women, in which all the Sufi women were named in the same order. And the difference was that she had woven in the women in the Sokoto community, thereby elevating their status. So it was a classic way of rewriting a poem so that the original author was known and your contribution was recognized, but it was all of a woven piece that was very smooth, same rhyme, same year. What we found out years later, a few years after this book came out, was that because Rekia Cornell published a book on As-Sulami, 10th century scholar, well, Al-Jawzi was doing the same thing of a poem of As-Sulami's poem in the 10th century. So alhamdulillah, this was amazing. And this is, she knew her stuff. She was absolutely well educated. Sheikh Mohammed's attitude is, yeah, you're right, everybody should be well educated in the Western scheme, but so that they can also, have a job and an income, but also pursue the canon in a very literate way, fluent in Arabic, fluent in Fulfulde. I mean, those are tough goals for someone living in 21st century America, but that is how people spend their time, intellectual pursuits. And you're right, he's not looking for a professorship or, you know, accolades at a conference. No, he's all about knowing. I mean, when we last spoke, he was distressed that he had not digitized more of Nana Asma'u's materials from Mewarno, because they're so important in an esoteric way in terms of the secrets of Sufi sciences. So, yeah, you're right that this is pure pursuit of knowledge. That's really hard to explain to people in a capitalist Western materialistic